Hyun stared at the rusty spaceship sitting in the auction yard like a piece of junk. His wallet was almost empty, just enough credits for maybe a decent meal or this beat-up alien warship that nobody else wanted. The auctioneer kept calling it a fully stripped Zephyrian military vessel, but something about that didn't sit right with Hyun. He'd been buying and selling salvage for 15 years now, ever since he got kicked out of the Earth Defense Force for asking too many questions about the weapons they wanted him to build. After all that time poking around broken ships, you develop a sixth sense about these things. This ship looked too clean in some spots, too damaged in others, like someone had tried really hard to make it look worthless. The bidding started at 500 credits. Hyun waited, watching the other salvage dealers shake their heads and walk away. Too big, they muttered. Too much work. Too alien. When the auctioneer got down to his final call, Hyun raised his hand. "Going once to the gentleman in the back for 200 credits. Hyun's heart pounded as he handed over literally every credit he had left. If this was a mistake, he'd be eating ration bars for the next month and sleeping in his tiny shuttle. But that nagging feeling in his gut told him there was more to this ship than met the eye. The paperwork took forever. Government bureaucrats loved their forms, especially when it came to alien technology. They made him sign 17 different documents, promising he wouldn't use anything he found for military purposes, wouldn't sell it to hostile forces, and would report any unusual discoveries to the proper authorities. Walking up the loading ramp of his new ship felt like stepping into another world. The corridors were tall and narrow, built for beings that were probably 8 feet high but skinny as rails. Everything had that weird purple tint that Zephyrian metal got after it had been in space for a while. The air recyclers were still working, which was surprising, and the gravity plating hummed softly under his boots. Most of the valuable stuff really was gone. Empty weapon mounts, stripped computer cores, missing engine parts. But Hyun had learned long ago that military ships always had hidden compartments. You just had to know where to look. He found the first secret panel behind what looked like a decorative wall carving. Inside was a tool kit with some interesting energy cells that were definitely worth more than what he'd paid for the whole ship. The second panel held navigation data that would be worth a fortune to the right buyer. But it was the third panel, hidden in the cargo bay behind a fake bulkhead, that changed everything. The stasis pod was still running. Hyun could hear the quiet hum of its power systems and see the frost patterns on the transparent aluminum cover. Inside was a figure in what looked like Zephyrian military gear, though he'd never seen a Zephyrian up close before. Most humans hadn't, since they kept to their own part of the galaxy and weren't exactly friendly to visitors. Hyun spent 20 minutes trying to figure out the alien controls before accidentally hitting something that made the pod start opening. Steam hissed out as the temperature equalized, and he stepped back, wondering if this had been a very bad idea. The alien's eyes snapped open like someone had hit her with electricity. For a split second, they just stared at each other. Then she exploded into motion. Hyun had never seen anything move that fast. She rolled out of the pod, grabbed a loose power cable from the floor, and tried to wrap it around his neck before he could even blink. Her strength was incredible, like fighting someone made of steel cables and pure anger. They crashed through the cargo bay, bouncing off walls and storage containers. She was screaming something in a language that sounded like a mix of bird calls and grinding metal. Hyun managed to break free and ran for the corridor, hoping to reach his shuttle and get the hell off this ship. But she was faster. She tackled him from behind, and they went sliding across the metal deck plates. This time she grabbed a broken piece of hull plating and started swinging it at his head like a club. "Wait! Wait!" Hyun shouted, rolling away from her attacks. "I'm not your enemy." She paused for just a second, head tilted like she was listening to something. Then his universal translator finally finished booting up and started converting her angry bird speech into words he could understand. "For you stole my ship, you scavenging parasite," she snarled, raising the metal plate again. "I'll feed your bones to the void." "I didn't steal anything." Hyun scrambled backward, hands up. "I bought this ship legally. Look, I have the papers." He fumbled for the auction documents in his jacket pocket, trying not to take his eyes off her. She was tall and lean like all Zephyrians, with grey-blue skin and those weird extra joints in her arms and legs. Her uniform was torn and dirty, but he could see military insignia on the collar. She snatched the papers from his hand and stared at them for a long moment. Then her face went through about 5 different expressions, none of them happy. "They sold me," she whispered, and for the first time since waking up she sounded more hurt than angry. "My own people sold me like cargo." Hyun slowly got to his feet, ready to run if she decided to start swinging again. "What's your name?" "Nari," she said, still staring at the auction documents. "Ship Commander Nari of the 3rd Expeditionary." "Fleet." She looked up at him with eyes that could have frozen plasma. "And you are the fool who just bought himself a lifetime of trouble." Nari crossed her arms and stared at Hyun like he was something she'd scrape off her boot. For the past hour, he'd been trying to figure out how to start the ship's engines, pressing random buttons and getting nothing but angry beeping sounds from the alien computer systems. "I already told you," she said in that cold voice of hers. "I'm not helping a thief fly my own ship." "It's not your ship anymore," Hyun shot back, sweat dripping down his face as he poked at another control panel. "Your people threw you away, remember? I'm the one who paid for this pile of scrap metal." She made a sound like an angry cat. "That pile of scrap metal is a Shadow Blade-class destroyer. It could turn your pathetic human ships into space dust." "Without breaking a sweat? Great. Then maybe you could help me figure out how to make it actually move instead of just sitting here like an expensive paperweight." Nari turned away from him and started examining her fingernails, which Hyun noticed were sharp enough to probably cut through steel. "Not my problem." That's when they heard the banging on the airlock door. "Station security," a voice shouted through the hull. "Open up immediately. You've got unpaid docking fees and about 6 different creditors who want to have a word with—" Hyun's stomach dropped. He'd forgotten all about the fees. The auction yard charged by the hour for parking, and he'd been on this ship for almost 4 hours trying to figure out how to fly it. At station rates, that was probably more money than he had left in his entire account. "Citizen Morrison." Another voice called out, "This is Agent Burke from Galactic Collections. You've got outstanding debts that need to be settled immediately." "Oh, that's just perfect," Hyun muttered, looking around the bridge for some kind of escape route. "Hey, Nari, you wouldn't happen to know if this ship has any hidden exits, would you?" She was still examining her nails, but he caught the tiny smile that flickered across her face. "Might have a few tricks up its sleeve. Shame you'll never find." "Out!" The banging on the door got louder. "Mr. Morrison, we're giving you 30 seconds before we cut through this airlock." Hyun ran his hands through his hair, trying to think. He could surrender, let them take the ship, and spend the next 5 years working off his debts in some mining colony. Or he could swallow his pride and ask for help from the alien warrior, who was clearly enjoying watching him panic. "Okay," he said, turning to face her. "What do you want?" "I want my ship back." "That's not happening. Then I want off this station before they drag me back to Zephyrian space for execution." Hyun blinked. "Execution? What did you do?" "I refuse to murder innocent people," she said simply. "Apparently that's a crime now." The sound of cutting tools started up outside the airlock. They had maybe 5 minutes before security broke through. "Fine," Hyun said. "Help me get this ship moving and I'll take you wherever you want to go. We both get what we need." Nari studied him for a long moment, then walked over to the pilot station. Her hands moved across the alien controls, like she was playing a musical instrument, touching panels and switches in a sequence that looked almost like a dance. The ship's engines rumbled to life with a sound like distant thunder. Lights flickered on all over the bridge as systems came online. Through the view screen, Hyun could see the station's docking clamps starting to release. "Strap yourself in, human," Nari said, sliding into the pilot's seat. "This might get bumpy." She wasn't kidding. The ship shot away from the station like a bullet, throwing Hyun against the back wall. Through the view screen, he watched the station shrink to a tiny dot in what felt like seconds. "Holy hell," he gasped, pulling himself into the co-pilot's chair. "How fast are we going?" "Not very," Nari replied, her hands still dancing across the controls. "This ship can do much better, but the engines are damaged. We're running on maybe 30% power." Behind them, Hyun could see security ships trying to follow, but they were already falling behind. Whatever this alien destroyer could do, at 30% power was apparently more than human security forces could handle. As they cleared the station's sensor range and entered open space, Nari finally relaxed a little. She leaned back in her seat and looked at Hyun with something that might have been respect. "You're not completely useless," she admitted. "Most humans would have panicked and done something stupid." "Thanks, I think." Hyun was still trying to process how fast they'd escaped. "So what exactly did you do to end up in that stasis pod?" Nari's expression went dark again. "There was a civil war. My people were split between the old government and the rebels. I was assigned to the Purification Fleet." Purification. We were supposed to cleanse rebel-held worlds, burn out the resistance by destroying their cities. She stared out at the stars streaming past. The first target was a farming colony. Mostly civilians, families with children. The rebels there had maybe a dozen fighters and some old hunting rifles. Hyun felt sick. "And your orders were to destroy the whole place." "Orders are orders," they said. "The greater good requires sacrifice," they said. Nari's hands clenched into fists. "I told my commander I wouldn't fire on civilians. He called it insubordination. I called it having a conscience. So they put you in stasis as punishment? They were going to execute me, but my family had some influence. Stasis was supposed to be temporary until the war ended and they could deal with me quietly." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I guess the war ended differently than they expected." Hyun looked at the alien warrior sitting next to him. An hour ago, she'd been trying to kill him. Now she'd saved both their lives and was sharing secrets that could probably get her shot for treason. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I think you made the right choice." Nari glanced at him, surprise flickering across her face. "You don't even know me. I know enough. You could have followed orders and murdered innocent people, but you didn't. That takes courage." They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars. Finally, Nari spoke again. "Where are we going?" Hyun thought about it. He'd been planning to head for the outer rim markets to sell whatever he could salvage from the ship, but now he had a fugitive alien warrior as a partner and a destroyer that was apparently worth more than a small planet. "I have no idea," he admitted, "but I guess we'll figure it out together." 3 days into their journey toward the outer rim, Hyun was starting to think they might actually make it without any major disasters. The ship was running smoothly. Nari had stopped glaring at him every 5 minutes, and they'd even managed to have a few normal conversations about things like food and music. That's when the pirates showed up. "Contact on sensors," Nari announced from her position at the tactical station. 3 ships moving fast and heading straight for us." Hyun looked at the display screen and felt his heart sink. The ships were painted blood red with black skull, markings on their hulls. Everyone in this part of space knew those colors. "Crimson Tide," he muttered. "Just our luck." The communication system crackled to life with a voice that sounded like someone gargling gravel. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Voss of the Crimson Tide. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resist, and we'll blast you into tiny pieces." Nari raised an eyebrow. "These pirates seem very confident." "They usually are," Hyun said, his hands already moving to the flight controls. "They've got 3 ships, and we've got 1 beat-up destroyer running on backup power. The math isn't exactly in our favor." "The math doesn't account for everything," Nari replied, her fingers dancing across the weapons console. "How good are you at flying this thing?" "I'm about to find out." The first pirate ship came at them head-on, probably expecting them to surrender or run. Instead, Hyun threw the destroyer into a spinning dive that would have made his old flight instructors proud. Laser fire streaked past their hull as he twisted between the attacking ships. "Left 20 degrees, down 10, Nari called out, tracking targets on her screen. "There's a weak spot in their port shielding." Hyun banked hard left, just as Nari fired. The alien weapons were unlike anything he'd ever seen, sending streams of blue energy that punched through the pirate ship's armor like it was made of paper. The vessel spun away, trailing smoke and debris. "1 down," Nari said with satisfaction. 2 to go. The remaining pirates weren't stupid. They split up, trying to catch the destroyer in a crossfire. Hyun had to use every trick he'd learned in his Defense Force days, plus a few new ones that probably violated several laws of physics. "Warning! Structural stress approaching critical levels," the ship's computer announced in its calm alien voice. Tell me something I don't know, Hyun grunted, pulling the ship through another impossible turn. His ribs felt like they were about to crack from the acceleration forces, but somehow the alien gravity systems kept them both conscious. Nari was completely focused on her targeting screen, calculating firing solutions while the ship twisted and spun around her. Coming up on the second target. Need you to hold steady for 3 seconds. 3 seconds might as well be 3 hours in this mess, Hyun replied, but he straightened their flight path anyway. The second pirate ship exploded in a ball of orange. Fire. But their victory celebration was cut short when the third ship managed to get behind them and started pounding their rear shields. Shields down to 40%, Nari reported. We can't take much more of this. That's when Hyun spotted the civilian freighter. It was an old cargo hauler, the kind that carried supplies between the outer colonies. Smoke was pouring from its engine section, and Hyun could see people in spacesuits floating near its hull. The third pirate ship had apparently been in the middle of robbing it when they'd arrived. There are survivors over there, Hyun said, pointing at the drifting figures. I can see that, Nari replied. What does that have to do with us? Instead of answering, Hyun changed course toward the freighter. The pirate ship followed, still firing. But now Hyun had a plan. He waited until they were almost on top of the burning cargo ship, then hit the brakes and spun the destroyer around in a move that would have been impossible for a human-built vessel. The pirate ship shot past them directly into Nari's firing line. She didn't waste the opportunity. The third pirate vessel joined its friends as a cloud of expanding debris. Nice flying, Nari admitted as Hyun maneuvered them closer to the freighter. But why are we stopping? We should leave before more pirates show up. Because there are people floating out there who need help, Hyun said, already suiting up for a spacewalk. They'll die if we just leave them. Nari stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You don't even know these people. They're not your responsibility. They're people, Hyun replied simply. That makes them everyone's responsibility. It took them 2 hours to rescue all the survivors. From the freighter. Most were cargo handlers and ship crew, but there were also a few families who'd been traveling to the outer colonies to start new lives. They were scared, grateful, and completely amazed that someone had stopped to help them. The pirates took everything, one of the crew members told Hyun as they treated his injuries in the destroyer's medical bay. All our cargo, our life savings, even the family photos, but you saved our lives. We can't repay that. You don't need to repay anything, Hyun assured him. Just get somewhere safe and start over. After they'd dropped the survivors at the nearest space station, Nari was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke up. On my world, we have a saying, the strong survive, the weak are forgotten. It's been that way for thousands of years. Sounds like a lonely way to live, Hyun observed. It is, she admitted, but it's practical, efficient. You can't waste resources on people who can't contribute to society. Those people we just saved, Hyun said, were they weak? Nari thought about it. They were victims of circumstance, bad luck. And if we'd left them floating in space, they would have died. But they didn't die because someone chose to help them. That's not weakness or inefficiency. That's what makes civilization worth having. They docked at a repair station to fix the damage from their fight with the pirates. Hyun was checking the shield generators when Nari grabbed his arm and pulled him behind a stack of cargo containers. Bounty hunters, she whispered, pointing toward the station's main corridor. 3 of them, armed, and they've got my picture. Hyun peered around the container and saw the hunters showing Nari's image to station personnel. One of them was holding what looked like an official government warrant. How much is the bounty? He asked quietly. 50,000 credits, Nari replied. Dead or alive? Hyun whistled softly. 50,000 credits would solve all his financial problems and give him enough money to buy a proper ship and start a legitimate salvage business. All he had to do was turn in the alien warrior who'd saved his life multiple times in the past week. Instead, he started planning their escape route. The maintenance tunnels run under the whole station, he explained, pulling up a schematic on his handheld computer. If we can get to access panel 7, we can bypass the main corridors and get back to our ship without being seen. Why? Nari asked as they crawled through the narrow tunnel system. How you could have turned me in and collected the reward. Why help me? Hyun thought about all the reasons he could give, because she'd saved his life, because she was his partner now, because 50,000 credits wasn't worth betraying someone who trusted him. But in the end, he gave her the same answer he'd given about the freighter survivors. Because someone has to. They made it back to their ship and escaped the station just ahead of the bounty hunters. As they jumped to hyperspace, Nari sat quietly in the co-pilot's seat, staring out at the swirling tunnel of light around them. Your species confuses me, she said finally. You make decisions based on emotion instead of logic. You risk everything for strangers. You choose honor over profit. Is that a bad thing? I don't know, she admitted. But it's not what I was taught. About humans. My people said you were selfish, greedy, only interested in your own survival. Hyun laughed. Some of us are, but some of us try to be better than that. Why? Because, he said, echoing her earlier words, someone has to. The asteroid field looked like a graveyard of broken rocks floating in the endless black of space. Hyun guided their damaged ship between the larger chunks, looking for a hiding spot, where they could make repairs without being spotted by patrol ships or bounty hunters. That one, Nari pointed to a massive asteroid with a hollow carved into one side. We can tuck the ship in there and work on the damage. The past few weeks had taken their toll on the destroyer. Pirate weapons, close calls with security forces, and pushing the engines beyond their limits had left scorch marks on the hull and several systems running on backup power. They needed time to fix things properly, and this hidden corner of space seemed like the perfect place to do it. Working together had become surprisingly natural. Hyun would crawl into the tight spaces between hull plates, while Nari handled the heavy lifting with her superior strength. She knew every system on the ship like it was part of her own body, while he brought creative solutions that no Zephyrian engineer would have thought of. Hand me that plasma torch, Nari said, her voice echoing from inside an access panel. This power coupling is completely fried. Which one? Hyun asked, looking at the dozen different tools scattered around them. The blue one that looks like it could cut through steel. They all look like they could cut through steel. Your people don't believe in making things user-friendly, do they? He heard her laugh from inside the panel, a sound he'd been hearing more often lately. Zephyrian tools are built for efficiency, not comfort. Everything about your people seems built for efficiency, Hyun observed, finally finding the right torch. Even your military uniforms look like they were designed by someone who thought comfort was a weakness. It is, according to my instructors. Nari's voice was muffled, but he could hear the bitterness in it. Comfort makes you soft. Soft warriors lose battles. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds being the hum of tools and the occasional curse when someone burned themselves on a hot component. It was during these quiet moments that they'd started sharing pieces of their past. I wasn't always a salvage dealer, Hyun said one evening, as they took a break from replacing damaged hull plates. They were sitting in the ship's small galley, sharing a meal of human ration bars and Nari's emergency military food packets. I assumed as much, Nari replied. You know too much about ship systems to be just a scavenger. I used to design weapons for the Earth Defense Force, spent 8 years creating better ways to blow things up. Hyun stared at his food without really seeing it. I was good at it too, really good. What happened? They wanted me to build something called the Planet Cracker, a weapon that could literally split a world in half from orbit. He shook his head. I ran the calculations, built the prototypes, did all the research they asked for. But when it came time to actually build the thing, I couldn't do it. Nari was listening intently now. Why not? Because it wasn't a weapon anymore. It was genocide in a convenient package. They said it would end wars by making them too terrible to fight. I said it would end wars by ending civilizations. Hyun finally looked up at her. They called it military necessity. I called it madness. So they discharged you. They tried to court-martial me first. Treason, they said, refusing a direct order during wartime. But I had enough friends in high places to get it reduced to a dishonorable discharge. He smiled grimly. Turns out there's not much demand for disgraced weapons designers in the civilian world. Nari was quiet for a long moment. On my world, questioning orders is considered a sign of mental defect. Warriors who can't follow commands are removed from service. Removed how? Usually execution. Sometimes exile if their family has influence. She looked at her own food, which she'd barely touched. Female warriors face additional challenges because of the caste system you mentioned. Females are supposed to be breeders, nurturers, support staff. The idea of a female in combat is considered unnatural by most of my people. Nari's hands clenched into fists. I had to fight twice as hard as any male just to earn the right to serve. Every victory was questioned, every mistake was magnified. But you made it to ship commander. That's pretty impressive. It took 15 years and more battles than I can count. I thought I'd finally proven myself. She laughed bitterly. Then one moment of conscience destroyed everything. Do you regret? Nari considered the question seriously. I regret the war. I regret the deaths. I regret that my people thought murdering civilians was acceptable. She met his eyes. But I don't regret refusing to participate in it. Good, Hyun said simply. That means you're still human. Well, you know what I mean. They were deep in. Conversation 3 days later when the ship's warning system started screaming. Nari rushed to the sensor station while Hyun fired up the engines. 3 contacts, Zephyrian configuration, Nari reported, her voice suddenly tense. Military hunters, heavily armed. Can we run? Not with the repairs half finished. The engines won't take the strain. She turned to look at him and he saw something like fear in her eyes for the first time. They've found me. The lead hunter ship's communication system crackled to life. Traitor Nari, this is Battle Leader Koth of the Purification Fleet. You will surrender immediately and return to face justice for your crimes against the state. Nari's face went pale. Koth was my second in command. He's the one who reported my refusal to follow orders. Former friend, former everything. She stood up from the sensor station and walked to the weapons console. He's here to finish what the war started. The hunter ships were closing fast, and Hyun could see on the tactical display that they were much newer and better armed than their stolen destroyer. In a straight fight, they wouldn't last 5 minutes. We need to combine our systems, Nari said suddenly. Human creativity with Zephyrian firepower. Is that even possible? I don't know, but it's our only chance. She started pulling access panels off the weapons console, exposing the alien circuitry underneath. Can you reroute power from the engines to the weapon systems? Maybe, but it'll leave us sitting dead in space if it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, we'll be dead anyway. Hyun dove into the engineering console while Nari rewired the weapon systems. They worked with desperate efficiency, combining human adaptability with Zephyrian precision. Outside, the hunter ships were getting closer, and he could see them charging their weapons. Ready? Nari asked, her hands hovering over the modified firing controls. As ready as we'll ever be, the first hunter ship opened fire just as Hyun brought their new hybrid weapons online. Instead of the usual blue energy beams, their guns now fired spiraling bolts of white-hot plasma that moved faster than anything he'd ever seen. The lead hunter ship's shields collapsed instantly. The second ship tried to dodge, but the modified weapons tracked it like a living thing. Within minutes, 2 of the 3 hunters were drifting wrecks. Battle Leader Koth's ship was the newest and most heavily armored, but even he couldn't stand against their combined ingenuity. His final transmission was filled with rage and disbelief. This is impossible. Humans cannot match Zephyrian technology. Maybe not, Nari replied over the communication channel. But together we can do things neither of our species imagined. Koth's ship retreated, damaged and defeated. As they watched it disappear into hyperspace, Nari slumped in her chair. I can never go home now, she said quietly. Attacking Zephyrian military vessels is an act of war. They'll never stop hunting me. We're both exiles now, Hyun agreed, looking at the floating wreckage of the hunter ships. By helping her, he'd made himself an enemy of the Zephyrian government. Too. Are you sorry? She asked. Hyun thought about it. He'd lost his career, his citizenship, probably his chance at a normal life. But looking at the alien warrior beside him, someone who'd become more than just a partner in the past few weeks, he realized he wasn't sorry at all. No, he said finally. Maybe we can find somewhere that appreciates what we can do together. Nari smiled. the first truly happy expression he'd seen from her. "I think I'd like that." As they finished their repairs and prepared to leave the asteroid field, Hyun realized something had changed between them. They weren't just two fugitives sharing a ship anymore. They were a team, bound together by trust, respect, and the knowledge that they were stronger together than either could be alone. The galaxy was a big place, and somewhere out there was a future they could build together. 2 weeks after their fight with the Zephyrian hunters, Hyun and Nari were still trying to figure out where to go next. They'd been jumping from system to system, avoiding the main trade routes and staying clear of both human and Zephyrian space. Their ship was running well now, better than it probably had in years, but they were both getting tired of being fugitives. "There," Nari said, pointing at a blip on their long-range sensors. "Large vessel not moving. Could be a derelict worth salvaging." Hyun adjusted their course toward the contact. After everything they'd been through, he was hoping for something simple. Maybe an abandoned cargo hauler with some valuable metals they could sell. Something that wouldn't involve getting shot at or chased across half the galaxy. As they got closer, though, it became clear this wasn't going to be simple at all. The ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of their destroyer. It looked like someone had taken a human colony vessel and stuck Zephyrian engine pods on the back, creating something that shouldn't have been able to fly, but somehow did. Lights were flickering along its hull, and Hyun could see what looked like emergency patches covering dozens of hull breaches. "Colony ship," Nari observed. "Mixed construction. That's unusual." That's putting it mildly. Hyun opened a communication channel. "Unknown vessel, this is the merchant ship Far Wanderer. Do you require assistance?" The response came back immediately, in a voice filled with desperation and hope. "Far Wanderer, thank God someone finally answered. This is Captain Park of the colony ship New Dawn. We've been drifting here for 6 days with failing life support. Please, we have 3,000 people aboard, including children." Hyun and Nari exchanged glances. 3,000 people was more than their ship could possibly handle, even if they wanted to help. "Captain Park, what's your situation?" Nari asked, taking over the communication. "We're refugees from the border wars. Mixed families, humans and Zephyrians who refuse to fight each other. Both governments declared us traitors and cut off all support." Captain Park's voice cracked slightly. "Our main power plant failed 3 days ago. We're down to emergency batteries and our air scrubbers are starting to break down." Hyun felt sick. 3,000 people, floating helpless in space because they'd chosen peace over war. Both species had abandoned them to die simply because they'd refused to hate each other. "Any rescue ships on the way?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Negative. Human command says we're contaminated by alien contact. The Zephyrian Purification Council has labeled us race traitors. No one's coming." Nari was already running calculations on her console. "Their life support will fail completely within 18 hours, she reported quietly. After that, she didn't need to finish. After that, 3,000 people would slowly suffocate in the cold darkness of space. "We have to help them," Hyun said. "How? We can't possibly evacuate that many people." "Then we fix their ship." Nari stared at him. "You want to repair a colony vessel with failing power systems using just our destroyer?" "You got a better idea." For a moment he thought she was going to argue. Then she started pulling up technical schematics on her screen. "It might work," she said slowly. "If we can transfer power from our engines to their main systems, it could buy them enough time to reach safe harbor." "Captain Park," Hyun called, over the communication channel. "We're coming aboard. Prepare to receive technical assistance." What followed was the most challenging repair job either of them had ever attempted. The colony ship was a nightmare of incompatible systems, human engineering mixed with Zephyrian technology in ways that should have been impossible. But somehow, the refugees had made it work. Hyun found himself crawling through maintenance tunnels, alongside human engineers and Zephyrian technicians, all working together to keep their people alive. Children of both species ran through the corridors, playing games that mixed human and alien traditions in ways that would have horrified the politicians back home. "Look at this," Nari said during one of their breaks. She was watching a group of kids teaching each other their respective languages, laughing when they mispronounced words. On my world, contact with humans is forbidden. Here, they're just children playing together. Pretty revolutionary stuff, Hyun agreed. Kids figuring out that the enemy is just people like them. The repair work took 2 full days. They had to completely rebuild the power distribution system, reroute life support through backup channels, and create new interface protocols that would let human and Zephyrian technology work together. It was exhausting, frustrating work, but also strangely hopeful. When they finally got the main power plant back online, the cheer that went up from 3,000 grateful voices was probably heard in the next star system. I don't know how to. Thank you, Captain Park said as they prepared to leave. You saved our lives. Where are you headed? Nari asked. There's a world beyond the frontier. No government claims it, no military presence. We're calling it Haven. Captain Park smiled tiredly. It's not much more than rocks and atmosphere right now, but it's ours. A place where humans and Zephyrians can live together without someone telling us we're supposed to be enemies. Hyun looked at Nari, seeing the same thought in her eyes. Room for 2 more? Are you serious? Captain Park's voice was full of disbelief. You'd give up your ship to join a bunch of refugees on an undeveloped world. This ship doesn't really belong to either of us, Hyun said. And honestly, I'm getting tired of running from both our governments. Maybe it's time to help build something new instead. The journey to Haven took 3 weeks, with their destroyer leading a convoy of smaller ships that had joined the colony vessel along the way. Word had spread through the underground networks that someone was actually helping the mixed families, and refugees started coming out of hiding to join them. By the time they reached their destination, they had over 5,000 people representing a dozen different species, all united by the simple idea that cooperation was better than conflict. Haven was exactly what Captain Park had described, rocks and atmosphere. But as Hyun watched the first shuttles land and families begin setting up temporary shelters, he saw something else. He saw hope. I've never had a partner I could trust completely, Nari said as they stood on their ship's bridge, watching the growing settlement below. Neither have I, Hyun replied. The past few months had shown him that trust wasn't about species or governments or ancient prejudices. It was about finding someone who would stand beside you when everything went wrong, someone who shared your values even when the whole galaxy said you were crazy. What do you think we can build here? Nari asked. Hyun looked out at the mixed groups of humans and Zephyrians working together to unload supplies, children of different species playing in the alien dust, engineers from both races collaborating on plans for their first permanent structures. Something neither of our peoples could manage alone, he said. Something that proves the galaxy doesn't have to be divided into us and them. As the twin suns of Haven set behind the mountains, painting the sky in colors that had never been seen by human or Zephyrian eyes before, Hyun realized they weren't just building a colony. They were building a future where the next generation might grow up without learning to hate people who looked different from them. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, conflicts, probably failures along the way. But for the first time since he'd bought that broken-down warship at auction, Hyun felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Standing beside someone he trusted completely, watching the birth of something that could change the galaxy forever. The war between humans and Zephyrians might continue in the settled systems, but here on Haven, peace was becoming reality, one friendship at a time.